And it does, it appears to me that it's governance by optics instead of by reason.
100%. And that was
Yeah.
my issue of where my breaking point came in, where I lost it. And at this point, I had cell phone numbers for various people in the state. My breaking point was when the announcement came out that a local strip club had been deemed essential and could reopen. And I lost can I swear on this show?
Sure.
I lost my shit. And I'm like, is this fake news, this article? And I literally took the link and texted it to someone in the state. And I said, is this for real? And she said, very politically correct. Yes, they're a restaurant and they are essential. And I said, stop it. They are not a restaurant. No one's going, you know what? I think I want to go to the strip club for dinner. They're not a restaurant. They have a restaurant license. And that's part of this, is that it's all the different loopholes. And it really, in business, it's finding the loopholes. What is the loophole I can use to get through this situation for it to be considered legal or allowed? And in that situation, they were using their restaurant license, as is a local stand-up comedy club. And
we want to get it on because we don't get along. We want to get it on because we don't get along.
What up? What up? Oh yeah. Well, here I stand with the mic in my hand, and I will pray to the Lord. I do the best that I can, 'cause in a world where possession is a question of a man's word, but we all are the same in the dirt. So I'm sticking around and I'll be dropping it down. I'll be kicking my sound just like a smoke. Never quit because it makes my belly grow. I will get me out of this one more time, and I say, can you help me? Can you help me get the hell out of here? Can you help me? Can you help me get the hell out? One for the money and two for the show. Three to get ready to bust down your door. And it's the one for the money and two for the show. Three to get ready to bust down your door. And hit the boom boom, pack up my crew, got so bad. I never ever quit, keep it hitting like a trap. With the boom boom, pack up my crew, got so bad. I never ever quit, keep it hitting like a trap. Situation that I'm facing, I'm not gonna leave this earth without my place in the world that I've been given, and stress becomes a dividend. Walk 100 miles in style for living it, 'cause I've been sticking around and I've been dropping it down, and I've been kicking my sound just like a smoker. Never quit 'cause it makes my family grow. Won't help me out of this one more time, and I say, can you help me? Can you help me get the hell out of here? Can you help me? Can you help me get the hell out? I want for the money and two for the show. I'm free to get ready to bust down your door. And it's a one for the money and two for the show. I'm free to get ready to bust down your door. And with the boom boom, pack up my crew, got so bad. I never ever quit, keep it hitting like a trap. With the boom boom, pack up my crew, got so bad. I never ever quit, keep it hitting like a trap. Can you help me? Can you help me get the hell out of here? Can you help me? Can you help me get the hell out?
You have been the podcast and producer and co-host of Women Your Mother Warned You About,
right.
The Chief Results Officer at Pivot 10 Results.
Yeah.
The president of Carolina Improv Company, which I am very well abreast of, because I've gone to a few of the things out there, and it gave me a whiff of Second City every time I went in.
Oh, good. It's better than a whiff of something else.
Yeah, exactly. And trainer, speaker, and coach. You went to DePaul University, studied radio, TV, and film, and you're a Blackhawk fan.
Yes. How do you not be a Blackhawk fan?
That's true.
I mean, it's when you grow up in Chicago, you're pretty loyal to all the teams, even when they suck.
March 30th of this year, Governor McMaster, which every time, I'm sorry, I have to take a break. Every time I hear Governor McMaster talk, all I can hear in my head is Foghorn Leghorn. It's from the kid. But anyway, he ordered
when the governor talks.
I said, boy, the executive order came in where to close all non-essential businesses.
But the titty bars, those will be essential.
Well, that's what was crazy. I mean, he shut all these things down, and what was it? May, he started opening some things back up.
Yeah.
And I think it was mid-May that you started to, I saw some messages that you were contacting the state, trying to get the theaters open.
You're saying mid-May you saw me stumping. And shooting my mouth off. Is that what I think that's what we're talking about.
But now, were you contacting people in the state and
yeah,
trying to lobby the?
Yeah, I was.
Sense?
I contacted the governor's office. I filled out the paperwork to be considered essential. Okay. Since there were so many businesses considered essential. And I really got nowhere with the governor's office. And it was just this pass the buck bureaucracy. Like, well, you need to call Department of Commerce. And I called Department of Commerce. They're like, well, you need to talk to Accelerate SC. And then I called them. They're like, no, you need to talk to the governor's office. I'm like, no, the governor's office said to talk to you. Well, you need to call the Department of Commerce. It was just like literally being bounced around and nobody knew the answers. And then I'm like, well, what if I just open against the order? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Well, technically we can't close your business technically by the Constitution, but local law enforcement can close you down. Okay. So then I tried to call local law enforcement just to see what they would do.
Yeah.
And I kind of reported another business that was open that wasn't supposed to be and wanted to see what they would do. And they did nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's how this works. Yeah. Yeah, so I went round and round. I think they know me. I think they have a picture of me on the wall in Columbia with darts.
It's dead or alive.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. Shut that northerner up.
Yeah. That carpetbagging Yankee.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's kind of weird. I could see where you get bounced around on all these things because, I mean, talk about weird times. It's an executive order, so it doesn't go through the Congress.
Right.
So it's not technically a law.
Right.
So it can't be enforced by law enforcement.
Well, it can't be enforced by the state, but it can be enforced by local jurisdiction law enforcement.
Which seems like it's a bit of a jump going from executive order to down to the local level. Right. Yeah, because once
it's just a pass the buck thing, in my opinion. I mean, hey, I'm not in their shoes, and I don't want to be in their shoes, and that's a whole different job, and I respect it, and I respect the offices. What happens though? It's a bureaucracy, like in any corporate entity, where it's like, well, let's just put them in charge over it. Like we're gonna do what's best to make us look good because it's an election year. That's just my opinion.
Yep, well,
we're gonna do what our constituents are asking us to do that are most likely to re-vote us in, and we're gonna put the order out there, and then we're gonna pass the buck, and we're gonna make the local guys the bad guys.
And it does. It appears to me that it's governance by optics. Instead of by
100%. And that was my issue of where my breaking point came in, where I lost it. And at this point, I had cell phone numbers for various people in the state. My breaking point was when the announcement came out that a local strip club had been deemed essential and could reopen. And I lost can I swear on this show?
Sure.
I lost my shit. And I'm like, is this fake news, this article? And I literally took the link and texted it to someone in the state. And I said, is this for real? And she said, very politically correct. Yes, they're a restaurant and they are essential. And I said, stop it. They are not a restaurant. No one's going, you know what? I think I want to go to the strip club for dinner. They're not a restaurant. They have a restaurant license. And that's part of this is that it's all the different loopholes, and it really, in business, it's finding the loopholes. What is the loophole I can use to get through this situation for it to be considered legal or allowed? And in that situation, they were using their restaurant license as is a local stand-up comedy club.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept pushing that one with the state as well. I'm like, there's no difference as far as like seating goes and experience goes and social distancing goes between a stand-up comedy club and an improv comedy club.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is they have a kitchen, but that's not their primary business, but they could use it as a loophole. And that was my breaking point with the Department of Commerce. And I said, please convey this message back to the governor that I have one word for you: optics.
Yeah.
Optics. Do you really want people and I saw, once I posted that, there was a lot of traction on social media, on my social media. People were enraged over, you got to be kidding, a strip club considered essential. That was just a bonehead move. I'm sorry.
Well, I made the little comment on there about perhaps it was a lobbying technique that we were missing. But yeah. But you're right. It is a loophole that they've used. Bars have been using that loophole for years. Too.
Yeah, and I think our state is antiquated in many different ways. And I'm not trying to be a northerner coming down to the South and saying, you know what you should be doing, but some of these laws are old laws. And to serve liquor, right? Not beer and wine, because we had a beer and wine license without food. To serve liquor, you have to serve food, and you have to serve so much food. So you have to be considered a restaurant. So and a lot of people are trying to be helpful. They're like, why don't you just become a restaurant? I'm like, well, that's not an overnight process.
Yeah.
I mean, you still need commercial equipment, and you still need to go through DHEC, and you still like that. And you still need the money to do it. And we were running out of money. So, and our space was not conducive to being a restaurant. So that, like the state called me back. They felt bad. What got crazy with the state is that I finally found someone with some common sense who said, this makes no sense. Of course you should be open. And she got it approved. We were approved to reopen.
Yeah.
And then some other theater, I'll leave nameless, complained because they weren't allowed to open because it was a different type of theater that would have way more people, and that sector of the entertainment business wasn't going to be approved. And so this person complained about me being allowed to reopen and complained loud enough that they rescinded my approval.
Okay. Yeah. I think
5 days later, after we then invested in PPE and like everything necessary to reopen, they rescinded I'm like, I can't make this up. That you're actually rescinding. I'm like, I'm, and then they call me back 4 weeks later. We got an idea. I'm like, it's too late. I moved out and closed.
Yeah.
Thanks for and their big idea was become a restaurant.
Amazing.
Bless their hearts.
But you've found a new location?
Yeah, we bounced back. When you're a business owner, you have to have plan A, plan B, plan C. You always have to have other plans in your back pocket.
Sure.
And luckily, as an improviser, I'm agile and able to adapt and kind of zigzag. So, one of the positives through COVID is partnering and kind of getting in cahoots with other theaters that we're all going kind of sharing the same pain. And what was nice about that is that we don't normally do that because a lot of theaters are extremely competitive. Having an improv theater background, our attitude is always collaborative. I'm always the one going, hey guys, let's work together. They're like, yeah, no. And it's been like that for 12 years. And now they're like, well, maybe there's power in numbers. So I think that's been the good thing with COVID is that there's been more openness to collaborating. So I became friends with the owners of GTS through this. With a big thank you to Michael Barefoot, the magician who performs there. And he's performed at my theater before, but he introduced us. And then we all became friends. And then we were like hanging out through COVID, through the lockdown. And I said, I'm not gonna make it. Like, we're all like concerned, like, who's gonna make it? I'm like, I have until July and I'm out of money. And she said, well, if we make it, you can come hang out with us. We'll give you a night. And it was going to be a severe reduction in our schedule, but I'm to the point where I'm just exhausted. I'm like, one night a week, I don't have overhead. I can just show up with my group and perform. Sold. So we already had that plan in place. We didn't think that plan would come into fruition until maybe the fall, but most likely 2021.
Yeah.
So that I put that on a shelf and I'm like, all right, let me go work on my other business and get that resuscitated. And then 4 days after we moved out of our space, the governor was like, okay, you can reopen the theaters. I'm like, thanks. Thanks for that. Thank you. So we literally moved out like July 28th. And then he made the announcement like August 3rd. And by August 7th, we were performing. And so there was like very little preparation.
Yeah.
And we're still working through the kinks because we weren't prepared. You can't just expect theaters to be like, boom, they can reopen.
Yeah. Now, are you going to be gradually introducing the classes back?
Yes. Actually, we do have a class scheduled for, I don't know when your podcast airs, but our first in-person class is scheduled for September 12th. We haven't had a huge interest in it. I haven't done a big push on it. I've had a couple of people email me actually in the past day about it, but we do have a class starting on Saturday, September 12th. We continue the virtual classes, and those have been great. And what's been awesome is that we have people joining those classes from all over the country.
Oh, cool.
As a result of my day business, the training business, before COVID, I was on the road 2 weeks a month. So I've got a really large network in other cities. So in those other cities, they're like, Gina's teaching online. Yeah. And so that kind of took off. So that was another silver lining to all of this, is expanding our network.
That's great because, I've always been a huge proponent of people to get involved and get the training and take a couple classes in improv. To me, it is something that is essential for anybody that's just in any type of communications to get comfortable, being able to talk, think on their feet. Like you said, be collaborative, be creative. There are so many different vast, I guess you'd say they're incomprehensible little lessons that can come out from these classes. It's just, it's amazing.
Personal and professional.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually in the middle of a blog series about all of this, because I've kind of coined a new term for it, which I can't announce yet. So stay tuned. There's so much benefit. One of my biggest observations in the many years I've been involved in this, especially as a corporate trainer, is that it runs so parallel to emotional intelligence. And why is this important for those not, following emotional intelligence? It's really about your ability to be aware of your own emotions and the emotions of others, and to be able to control your emotions and influence others' emotions. So it starts with this awareness. And so what we've been experiencing through COVID, you'll notice, is that there's a lot of anxiety. There are people that are kind of going off the deep end in how they react to things, because there's so much deep rooted, and it's kind of psychological at the same time. If we pay attention to people, like the number one rule in improv is to make other people look good. And if you stay in that mindset of, my job is to make you look good on stage and to not think about myself, and your job is to do the same thing. Imagine the byproduct from that when you stay in that mindset. But you also have to be so aware of your partner's emotions and feelings and beliefs and ideas, as well as your own. And that is the root of it, really. And
philosophically too, I think there's so much of a predisposition to negativity, but when you're in improv, the whole thing is you got to say yes.
It's the opposite. It's the opposite. You have to be predispositioned to what's negativity,
Optimism.
Optimism. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
It is about the yes and the philosophy and mindset of yes and, which is not something I own. It's known in improv. It's the basis of everything. And yes and being the opposite of a yes but. And when you replace one 3-letter word with another 3-letter word, you replace the but with an and, it changes the context of everything. It changes the attitude. It changes the mindset. It knocks down walls. It creates trust. People like you when you're like, yes, and you can still not be in favor of something with a yes and.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about acceptance versus agreement. So think about this universally from an improv perspective. We could change the world by being yes and mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're in the mindset of like, I can accept where you're coming from, even if I don't agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the examples I give is our own culture at Carolina Improv. When you look at the performers that make up Carolina Improv, they're all ages, all walks of life, but all very different belief systems and things that they, what their jobs are. And I look at and ages, when you look at from like 20 something to 70 something, extremely conservative and Christian to extremely liberal and atheist, like it is like all across the board, or in the middle is just spiritual, and Republican and Democrat. And I mean, the beliefs and the values are so different as individuals, but collectively, we all come from the same place of acceptance without judgment.
Right.
And so
libertarian.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
I had to slide that in.
We're the normal ones. Don't tell anybody. That would be a judgment. But it's really about, I don't have to agree with where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I have to stop and breathe and accept where you're coming from. And when I can come from a place of acceptance, acceptance leads to empathy.
Yeah. I mean, there's just, I think people are kind of denying the yin and yang of life. That's what makes things interesting, is when we have different perspectives and things like that. That's where we come up with creative solutions. We have those things. Yeah.
Exactly. We can come to really interesting innovations and solutions when we just shut up and listen to what other people have to say. Let them talk and share their ideas and thoughts and beliefs, and then bite your tongue if you're so vehemently against something. Because usually our knee-jerk reaction to be vehemently against something or to have a visceral reaction is something about ourselves that's deeper rooted. Yeah. And if we're having that kind of reaction, it means that someone is going against what we believe in. And then we take that personally, because the universal truth of all of this is that we all, I mean, I'm going to get a little woo-woo here. We all want to be loved. That's the universal truth of this.
Yeah.
And so our reactions are based on, no, I'm right. Love me.
That's true.
And so when you can become aware of that emotion, and then you can manage your own emotion, then you can actually start to recognize it in other people. When people, it's hard being a business owner. Everyone's got the answers. Everyone wants to tell you what you should be doing. And early on, as an entrepreneur, I used to get like, no, but love me. I'm like trying to be a really good. And then I got to a point of like, that's your opinion.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Those are great insights. I was curious about your opinion on something too. That's kind of a modern phenomenon that I'm in love with: memes. A picture with words. Yeah. Just that goes out there. I think some of them are brilliant because they can be deceptive, but sometimes they can be really deep. I have been, playing with those ideas and so on to put them out there. Mnemonic things. I've been having a ball just with the whole meme world. What's your take on it? Because I have some people that absolutely hate them. They think
why? Like, why do they hate them?
Well, they think it's the downfall of society because we're taking out dialogue and meaningful dialogue in favor of these postage stamps that are these visual postage stamps that really don't mean anything and can get people very confused. And
well, I think that's subjective, that they don't mean anything. I think memes are just a form of opinion and speech.
Yeah.
And sometimes a form of facts. Like if you can pull out a fact and then you turn that into a meme. I think we're visual people, especially in a digital world. So visuals are going to engage people more than just words, especially now. I think we're so inundated with people ranting, and I'm a ranter. I've had people get frustrated with me. Like, actually, my podcast co-host, we had like a little knockdown. We almost broke up, but she's like, you keep posting about the governor, and I'm like, hell yeah. Yeah, I'm posting about the governor. Yeah, because I'm trying to get attention. I mean, yeah, I'm ranting. You're right. Because sometimes you have to rant and be a squeaky wheel to get things done. So I think, to me, freedom of speech, post things that you think are going to engage people, and know that and know that you're going to polarize some people.
Right. I mean, I've known, well, our local mayor, I've known her and her family for years. And I would do things kind of tongue in cheek, and people thought I was just the worst person in the world. And I was just like, okay, I'll stop. I'll back off a little bit, but
well, I'm gonna go back to my earlier comment about emotional intelligence. People reacting to you negatively, like they don't like what you're posting, is their stuff, is their baggage, is their issue, is their trigger point, that something about what you're posting is bringing something up for them. And one of the best lessons I've been given is, it's none of my business what other people think about me. It's none of my business what other people say about me. It's their business.
Yeah.
And so we have to, I'm a believer in standing in your beliefs and your values. And sometimes that's lonely to do that, because if you take a stand, you have to realize that someone's not going to agree with you.
Oh,
so what do you do? Be wishy-washy? And I mean, I guess then you run for a political office. You're trying to be everything to everybody.
Well, which is why I've got very dismal prospects on November 3rd. So
some people have been joking, like, they're like, you should run for governor. I'm like, I don't know if the nude pictures of me out there could sustain election.
But it would open up your business.
Yes. That's a good point. That's a good point.
So what other things you got on the horizon? We're going to get the classes started up. You've got, I know what you've got. You have been taking notes on, is it a new podcast series that you're going to be doing?
Notes on what? Where'd you?
I think you had something you were, I don't know if you're traveling and taking flight. Yeah.
So I, you're talking about my post about, I voiced a blog series while I was driving.
Yes.
Yeah. So my marketing team, I mean, I love to write, and I'm a writer at heart. And if you ask me, like, what do I want to be when I grow up, it was always a writer. And the irony is I get no writing done. So my marketing team was like, could you please get this blog series done? Which is actually going to be the foundation of my book. So I'm like, all right, I just have to find a way to do this. So I decided that on my drive to Virginia Beach, I would voice the entire thing while driving. And that's what I did. So
so here's how I envisioned your series. Get the hell out of the way. Move. Get those. Do you know where the gas is?
Yes. Yeah. And the funny thing is that, I'd said to my marketing people, I said, this will be good. Cause they're like, that's great. Cause it's super easy to then take the audio and upload it and get it transcribed for free and get that done. And so I got it transcribed. So I've got, all it has to do is be tweaked. So the marketing team's like, well, just, get that done. And then we'll take it and we'll edit it and rewrite it. And they're like, and we want the audio because we want to hear your voice. so that we can get the flavor of your voice as we rewrite it. So I'm like, so there's a lot of that in there. I'm like, is this thing working? I'm like, I don't know if it's recording. Is it record? Like, so when it came back, it was super funny. So the blog series is almost done, and it's a long series. It's probably 7,000 to 8,000 words right now, and it's going to be turned into an ebook, and then it'll be a larger book. So that's it's going to be part of my learning platform. So we're launching a virtual learning platform that takes improv. I mean, it's stuff that we're doing now. So we were forced to take our corporate training and go virtual with it, just like our classes, which was a real struggle for me to wrap my head around, but I didn't have a choice. So we've moved everything virtually. And I think part of my struggle with it is that it's a lot of work to go from instructor-led training to now I have to take everything virtually. And there's a lot involved with that. You know, you need a virtual platform for that. Like, where's your training going to sit? Where are the videos going to sit? You have to produce videos. You have to have workbooks and other content, and you have to engage your participants in a different way. And that's just the operations of it. Then you have to market it and sell it and get people to sign up for it. And it's just, my head starts spinning because I'm a creative and a visionary, and I can produce the ideas, but everything else, like my eyes start, I'm like, oh my God, the eyes roll in the back of my head. I'm like, can somebody just do it for me? And for years I avoided taking improv online because I couldn't wrap my head around it, number one, but number two, like, I'm not good with that technology piece of it. And there was this woman who kept trying to, like, you got to take your stuff online. I have this course that teaches you how to take it online. I'm like, let me repeat myself. I will pay you to take it online. I don't want to take your class to learn how to do. I finally found someone that was willing to do it for me.
Yeah.
And so we're getting ready to launch that. It's going to launch probably in the next week or two. Probably the biggest news I'm super excited about is partnering with Jeb Blunt of Sales Gravy, who is one of my absolute role models. I always joke that I have a business crush on him. He is a sales thought leader. So in the sales world, he's really well known and has written books like Fanatical Prospecting and Objections and People Buy You. And I've really relied on his teachings as I came up as a sales trainer, because I didn't just show up as a sales trainer. I saw that improv was highly effective with timeshare salespeople that were taking my classes. And so that created a pivot in our business to become a sales training company using improv and making us very unique and differentiating us from everybody else. So I had started approaching other sales training companies that do more conventional sales training, which is, here's the process of selling. I'm like, bring me on. And now that they've learned how to be on a script, I'm going to deprogram them and get them off the script to be able to get off the script when necessary. So that's the piece that we add that makes this unique. So my strategy was to go after these other sales training companies. So I've been following Jeb for years. Finally he just released a new book called Virtual Selling. Last year, he built $1 million production studio because he was foreseeing the recession coming in 2021. So he knew he was going to have to make a leap into virtual training. So when COVID hit, his company was not impacted. As a matter of fact, they made more money than the year prior because they were able to pivot really fast because the infrastructure was in place. So he's been on my podcast 3 times, and we joke with him because I'm like, I have a business crush on him. And by his 3rd guest appearance, he was dropping F-bombs with us, which was hysterical because, when you have like this idol and you're trying to be proper, and then all of a sudden he's like, I don't know, you girls make me blush. Now I'm swearing. And then I snuck my way onto his podcast. I don't even want to say snuck my way on. I just asked. I'm like, I asked his person to put me on this podcast. And then when I showed up for it, it was the funniest. I wish he's got to have the video somewhere. He called me out on it the last time he was on my show. He's like, you want to tell everybody how you got on my podcast? And I show up at his podcast, kind of like we are today. And he's in his fancy studio and they're getting him all mic'd up and I'm sitting at my kitchen table and he's like, okay, I'm ready. I'm like, great. So am I. And there's all this silence and he's like, all right, I'm ready. I'm like, me too.
That's it.
And then he's like, are you interviewing me or am I interviewing you? I'm like, Chip, you were just on my show 2 weeks ago. I've already interviewed you. You're interviewing. He's like, you're on my show? I'm like, yeah. He goes, how did that happen? I'm not taking any guests right now. How did you? Oh, you really found a way through Lisa to get. I'm like, I don't know to tell you. My people called your people, and here I am. So it was the funniest. And then I was like, my heart was sinking. I'm like, he doesn't want me here. And he was such, he was such a gentleman and classy and went through the interview. And I had an opportunity to put him on the spot. And he had no time to prepare for the interview with me, but he was amazing because you would have thought he did. And we did a feature on me being an entrepreneur, and then we talked about improv, and I put him through an improv exercise, which made him squirm. And after the interview ended and the recording was done, he said, listen, he's like, I'm going to ask you a question, and you don't have to answer right now. I want you to think about it. And I said, okay. He's like, what if you brought training to my company for our clients and you brought improv to Sales Gravy and we sold that to our clients? He's like, you can think about it. I go, no, I don't need to think about it. Yes. He's like, well, I don't know.
Snuck in again.
That's my running joke with him. I'm like, he says yes to everything. I'm like, yeah. I don't care about the money. I'm like, I want to get in with, yes. So I think it's launching next week. We contracted for me to be a content provider with Sales Gravy University. I had already created some content. He looked at it. He loved it. He said, we can start with this content. So it's launching, I think, next week.
Oh, wow. That is
so
great.
it's a big deal. So I will be designing other content. So I will be like the improv component of Sales Gravy University. It's huge. It's like a dream come true.
Yeah.
So, and he finally aired the podcast by interview like a month ago. Cause I'm like, he's never going to air it. He was just appeasing me. And then he aired it and it's gotten a lot of traction, which actually it led to another sales training company reaching out to me, and they focus on, sports and entertainment. Like Live Nation is a big client of theirs. So I'm now designing sales training for those industries. So
congratulations. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So it's it's been an interesting 2020 has been an interesting year. So a lot of exciting things. There've been a lot of crazy disappointments. Again, in an improv mindset, you have to look at failure as an opportunity to soar.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't just talk about embracing failure. We talk about soliciting failure. So when you solicit failure, you try to break things. You want to break them so you can make them better. A book that I really, really love and recommend is called A Beautiful Constraint. And it really talks about how the things that get in our way and become impediments, how we can look at those as really as gifts.
A beautiful constraint.
A beautiful constraint.
Right. I'm going to have to add that to the reading list. You probably, well, I'm an avid reader and a great proponent of literacy. Well, to wrap up the recording session of this, when can people go and see the performances of
Friday
improv?
Nights at 7 p.m. at GTS Theater, which is at 1220 Port Drive next to Jam and Leather.
Jam and Leather. Okay.
We want to get it on because we don't get along. We want to get it on because we don't get along.
What up? What up? Oh yeah. Well, here I stand with the mic in my hand, and I will pray to the Lord. I do the best that I can, cause in a world where possession is a question of a man's word, but we all out of same shirt, so I'm sticking around.